so you can unlock any unlimited access to essential content and resources. Today, we have a very interesting topic. It's kind of about experiential marketing, but really we're going to dive into AR and augmented reality. And to do that, we're joined by Brock University marketing professor and our Adweek Academic Council member, Joachim Scholz. Hi.
Hi, cool. How are you doing?
I'm great. How was your weekend?
Oh, it's great. Like having a long weekend. And we just also finished on Friday our augmented reality marketing class, the first in the world at Brock University.
Wow. Yeah. End of the semester in what's been a really incredible year. And it was a quiet weekend, I think, for both of us. We didn't really have fireworks, at least the way that we've traditionally have seen them. But brands have kind of stepped in to create those kind of similar experiences. Before we begin, I want to get kind of a textbook definition from you on what AR is or what it's kind of becoming.
Sure. AR, augmented reality, is when we overlay digital information over the physical environment. And like a good thing to think about is in terms of you are in your room like just now, and on your table somewhere, like there would be maybe a vase displayed if you wanted to buy a vase, or if you wanted to kind of put a picture on your wall and you weren't quite sure yet which one is a good one or what size looks good. So you're staying in your environment. And that's a bit different from virtual reality, for example, where you take yourself out of the environment. So AR is really in our real world, and we just augment it here and there with some digital objects.
Yeah, that does remind me. By the way, this is real, but I think Home Depot had an app where you can kind of visualize in real time, but in an alternate reality, what it might look like actually on the wall. I want to get to an example that Canada put up for their Independence Day. Can you tell me a little bit about what Tim Hortons did to emulate fireworks displays?
Yeah, for sure. And it was really fun. I joined in that fun. So Tim Hortons is the most Canadian brand that comes to my mind, of course. So it's like coffee house everywhere. And Canada Day is on July 1st. And Canada, even though they're doing quite well with the COVID crisis, they shut everything down quite aggressively, and they're slowly reopening. But the fireworks displays, they were kind of put aside for the public. And so Tim Hortons came in and said, like, how about we kind of create this AR experience around fireworks? So what you did was you just took your phone, you went into a web page, and that was not an app. You didn't have to download anything. You just went onto that web page. And then at 10 p.m. on July 1st, it went live. And you would just direct it to the sky, and then you would see traditional firework kind of coming up, like the one we know, right? So like blue and white and red, especially red and white in Canada. But also some other structures appeared, or more like things you couldn't do in normal life, but with AR you could do. So Canada being Canada, they had like a maple leaf exploding in the sky. They had a beaver and hockey sticks. So they were a little bit more elaborate in their shapes.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point that it can not only replace something, but with added features, it can enhance something. And the point is to try to make it really exciting. And the fact that Canada did it where you didn't have to download another app makes it more accessible. So the next example that we wanted to bring up was Budweiser's, because Budweiser has sometimes traditionally done campaigns where it's limited to a group of influencers. So what did they do? What have they done to kind of evolve their campaigns?
Yeah, so Budweiser is really good at experiential marketing, that is for sure. But the limitation of traditional experiential marketing is always that it has a very limited reach. And you would either, as you said, Cole, like get a couple of influencers in like a hotel, like that happened earlier this year, and make an experience for them, and then hope that they talk about it online. But AR allows brands to provide an experience at scale for everybody just to join in. And so Budweiser did, and I think you just set up this lens, if you want to bring it up again. It kind of helped us consumers, and that's a couple of years back, transform ourselves into Uncle Sam for Independence Day. And that really fits, right? Because first of all, it's me doing that. I'm not just watching an influencer doing it, it's me doing it. So I'm personally engaged. But it's also fitting with like this entire brand narrative Budweiser has created over years. Like Budweiser is the all-American brand. Like Tim Hortons is the Canadian brand, Budweiser is the American brand. One is coffee, the other one is beer. That kind of gives you a hint, maybe. And so I think always it makes a huge difference if this experience kind of piggybacks on a very well-established brand story. And just think for a moment, there was like a brand that did that same filter in AR on Independence Day, but they weren't associated necessarily as the all-American beer. You would feel like that this is maybe very opportunistic or something like this, or it would seem cheap. But in a brand that has created this long-lasting brand image of being like this very national brand, that makes sense. And that's a good trick if you think about these AR marketing campaigns. You want to
right and
help. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you want to give customers a way to kind of put themselves inside brand narrative, but that space needs to be created first, right? So if you don't have a well-established brand narrative, then there is no good place for customers to insert themselves, and there's little control you have as a marketer. But the more you have that brand story established in the outset, the more effective AR is going to be.
That's a really good point about how you need the brand awareness first before you have the brand extension through experiential, and then in a more specific way through AR. I think bigger brands have the budgets too to kind of dive in with these kinds of experiences and really try to shift people's perspectives. So I know another big brand like Adidas transformed their entire store into something else, right? Something else to kind of tell a newer brand story. What happened there? And I think it's an interesting example because the pandemic has closed a lot of stores. But what does this example demonstrate for us?
Yeah, I love that example. And I think Adidas is doing so many great things. And it fits again into this idea of you have a certain brand narrative you're already following through, and then you just add the AR to it. So in Adidas case, they're known for affecting positive change through sports and innovation in sports. And they partnered up with Parlay for Oceans, which is an organization that raises awareness for like our oceans and the health of our oceans. And then they used recycled marine plastic to create, I think, 11 million running shoes or something like this. And so this is already great from the company. And then you walk into their store, and that was earlier this year before they closed, of course. And you would, in this case, download an app, you would point it towards video display, and then suddenly you are immersed in water around you. And so right now, it is, of course, only through this small little window of our screens we have, but in the future, 3 to 5 years from now, this will be like a more immersive environment once we have smart glasses on. And you would look around you and you would see a whale floating by, but you would also see like a lot of plastic pollution coming into the ocean. And then it creates, again, like a place where the brand story is presented to me as a stage, so to speak. I, as a customer, can place myself into that brand story. That whole store, as you mentioned, Ko, like it transforms and shifts my perspective. And this is like such a cool picture of it, where you see the whale and the plastic around it, and you have this very emotional reaction to it, but you also can take actions already. So you can tap on the plastic, you collect the plastic out of the water.
Wow.
And of course, that isn't the real deal, but it's simulating action. And that simulating action does something to us. So like we saw this in other things as well. When we simulate giving blood, for example, there's a higher chance that you then actually go about donating blood. And so that little step, that mini step you do, and you realize that, oh, I could do that, maybe makes you pick up some plastic the next time you're visiting the beach.
Right. And the simulation still kind of tells the brain that this is a real thing. So in addition to that, with the emotional power of something like this, it definitely creates some kind of impact that will lead later potentially to conversion, as you're saying. Is this one a good example of a good balance between a passive, immersive experience and versus an active, engaged, pulling in kind of immersive experience, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's a great example because it combines actually like the conversion with the experience, right? So like you're already doing this in the store, and that doesn't necessarily have to be in the environment. I think in the future, like those experiences can be created a lot more large scale. But at the end of that experience, because the way the experience is kind of unfolding, you will get information about the shoe. And then you can think about what is the next step, right? And a lot of news have been made recently about augmented reality in an e-commerce setting, especially with the shuttering of stores. You can then go the next step and see like how would that the shoe look like on my own feet. So I pull down, I am the same application still. I just tap a button, point the lens to my feet, and then I see the shoes being overlaid over my feet, and then I could decide to kind of buy them or not, and then they're gonna be delivered to me. So you would have like this complete kind of purchase journey, like, but it starts with excitement, and I think that is important for me. I think right now,
Yeah.
Because all of the wonderful tools we've gained over the last 2 years really focused on this last bit of the journey, the conversion bit, because I could see how the product looks like on me, on my space. But as marketers, we are interested in creating excitement as well. And we're excited about like emotional reactions. And I don't think just seeing a product visualization will do that for us, but having a transformation of our environment, taking a new perspective, I think that is the potential of AR, and it's great to see how those two things come together.
Yeah, and that's what you mean by AR not just being a tool for e-commerce, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think in the beginning of AR, so I'm researching AR and teach about AR for 5-6 years now. And in the beginning, a lot more examples I saw were about that experiential marketing component. And then it shifted totally over into like e-commerce and product visualization because we got tools to do that. And it was a lot easier. And I think in the next future, we will see this shifting back again. And there are certain infrastructure developments right now happening that make me very confident in this. So Apple, for example, recently announced a new way of kind of tying in geographic information into augmented reality experiences. They call these location anchors. There are other companies that negotiate with buildings and other properties downtown. So I, as a marketer, could actually rent that virtual space around a bus shelter on scale. So like there are a lot of new infrastructure developments that I believe in the next couple of years will make those type of experience as accessible for marketers as these e-commerce tools are today.
Yeah, and it seems like they're going to come sooner than we can imagine. There is an example of kind of something anchored in place, the campaign for United Way with the hashtag unignorable. How did that work, and what did that really show?
Yeah, so like that is a campaign in Toronto, and like that image is very telling. That small tower next to the big tower is the CN Tower in Canada or in Toronto, which is the tallest building in town. And it just gives you an idea of the scale of that virtual tower next to it. And that's 2.5 times the size or the height. And the idea was that there are over 160,000 people in the greater Toronto area that struggle with putting a roof over their head. And that is one of those problems that are way too easy to ignore. And then United Way looked for a solution to kind of really drive that point home again in a very emotional way. And the solution was let's imagine how a tower would look like to give a place to live for all of those individuals and families. And what I love about this is that when we normally talk about helping us to imagine something, we are with augmented reality, we're talking about imagine how that lipstick would look on my face or how that couch would look in my living room. Those are very small things to imagine. Like there's a very small step. This is something we are surrounded by every day. United Way and their partners, they found a way to imagine something that is incredibly hard to imagine. And they used like central location, And I think that is really powerful, and it's also showing the power of augmented reality experiences. So, like, I don't know, many of your audience probably they know Star Wars, and the famous kind of scroll in the beginning is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and then the movie starts. And so the idea which we play around in marketing is tell the story, and then we hope that consumers transport themselves into that story world. But that story is in a galaxy far, far away. And then once they return from that story, the hope is that they are coming back somehow changed. They have different attitudes or more likely to behave in certain ways. The data isn't quite out yet on that. Like, I'm still doing my research in the context of Pokemon Go there. But my strong suspicion is that if that story unfolds in your normal reality, and then it just creates this alternate reality you mentioned earlier, Ko, that has to have a bigger effect than a story far, far away.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I kind of want to leave you with the last question of, you touched on this a bit, but where do you think AR is going to go? Back to that pendulum swing that you talked about, and how do brands kind of get involved or think about that, especially, if they're not really big brands?
Those are two really good questions. Let me try to tackle the first one first. The pendulum, I think, swung all the way to the other side. Now it's coming back, but it will kind of hopefully end up in these integrated ways you and I already talked about today, right? So as a marketer, there's often that tension between performance marketing and brand building marketing, right? And we need both to be successful in being a successful steward of our brands. Now, the idea with AI is that you can create experiences that are actually seamlessly tied in to online shopping solutions. And that's a key difference, right? If you think about traditionally, you had maybe like a storefront or maybe like an online store, and then you had like crazy experiences somewhere else, but there was always like this gap, and AR can close this gap. And that's why I think there's a huge opportunity for marketers. And I think also that makes it very encouraging for us to kind of move into like these more holistic experiences, tying over into conversion-oriented e-commerce applications. In terms of the smaller companies you mentioned, the good thing is that AR itself doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, obviously it has some costs associated with it in terms of developing, etc. But the media costs could be relatively small. Like, for example, if you already have an app installed, you can just add it to your component, the AR experience to your app, and then you have that already in your established own media channel. Or if you wanted to work with geo-coded Snapchat lenses, that is relatively affordable. And if you went and printed out these snap codes, that's very affordable because you pretty much bring your media costs down to zero. And then developing them, of course, that you need to have somebody who's doing that for you. But these big companies like Spark with Facebook and Snap Studio by Snapchat and other places, they're giving developers a lot of easy to use tools to kind of create experience around it. I think the biggest focus for every company, regardless of size, is that they have to gain competence in augmented reality marketing, right? And there's like a perception out there that the benefit of AR hasn't been proven yet. I think about like 69% of marketers who were surveyed last year were under the impression that we just don't know the ROI impact of AR yet. And I think that's just not true any longer. Like, there's been a lot of examples right now that demonstrate this is really working. And the ROI is often substantially higher than traditional forms of advertising. But there is a very real stumbling block, and that is that also around 2/3 of surveyed marketers said that we just don't know about AR enough. We don't understand how to use it, what to use it for, what do we have to kind of look out for. And I call this the competence gap with companies. And I think a great way is to kind of look for places like universities that are incorporating augmented reality in their curriculum. like at Brock University. I started there last year, coming over from California, and the goal was with Brock University that we become like the center of excellence for AR marketing. And our first students are graduating actually in the next couple of weeks with AR marketing experience. And they created an AR marketing application for a national wine brand in Canada. So
Cool.
as a company, I would look for like who are places that have really embraced that new technology in terms of universities, so we can hire from them, in terms of agencies, so that we can kind of get expertise in there, and then over time build in-house expertise on that topic.
I love that. Well, thank you for helping us close the competency gap here and keeping track of what's happening, all that's exciting in the world of AR and experiential. I want to thank you for your time and expertise, Professor Joachim Scholz, and part of our academic council here at Adweek.
Thank you so much for having me, Cole. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, so much fun. We have many more conversations ongoing this summer for Adweek together. Next week, we're going to be joined by Coltrane Curtis from Team Epiphany, an agency, and we're going to talk about the future of culture. And of course, a reminder to sign up for your Adweek subscription at adweek.com/offer to unlock unlimited access to all of our essential content and resources. That's all for now. I'm Ko Im. Have a great week.
All right.
There's Josh. Cool. Oh, no, it's fine. That part is not a big deal.